radar network in each state. They should be able to get documents to you quickly. Again, my favorites. And then online databases. When I did consulting for the New Jersey HIV Prevention Planning Group, I like to use, instead of schlepping to the library, I would use Uncover. I placed in your packet on the right-hand side, there's 5 organizations, companies, that's what they do. They will email you articles, a little pricey, but when you're running out of time and need an article fast, you go to Uncover or Doc Deliver or Info Retrieve, or even actually the New York Public Library in Manhattan is getting into this business. Call them up and say, hey, you need this document now, today. They'll get it to you, email, fax, FedEx. And you need fallback positions. So, if you don't have access to a university library, maybe you've not done that networking with school social work professor to get a student on your team. You don't have university access to the university library at all, too far, whatever. There's this fallback position of getting these documents real fast. So you want to know where they are, how to utilize these databases in terms of doing research. You got to be savvy at this. You can't spend half your time in that 8-week window just doing the research, right? Okay, why don't we move on to section 1 of the narrative, your literature review. What's the point of a literature review? Well, establishes a theoretical or conceptual basis for your project, assists you in determining the best strategy for carrying out your project, help demonstrate the relevance of your topic and how your project will add to the body of knowledge in this area, helps you determine the state of the art. Now, a good rule of thumb is to review literature that has been published within the past 5 years. Find the authors whose work is cited the most frequently. These are known as the seminal works in the field. For example, in drug prevention, Hawkins and Catalano. The reviewers will look for Hawkins and Catalano. If they don't see it, you've not nailed down. You have to absolutely nail down the seminal work in the field. Use an index of citations that are available at university libraries. If you're not familiar with an index of citations, just type in review of the literature and the topic, schizophrenia. All caps, and. And then there will be some professor at some university who's got a peer-reviewed journal article on just reviewing the literature. And then quickly you can find out what the seminal work is that way. That's sort of a quick and dirty way to do it. But in addition to that seminal work from reviewers, always look for those 5 years of citations, last 5 years. So they'll say, Mike, we know that they've nailed down Hawkins and Catalano, but where is 1999? Where is 2000? Reviewers are savvy. You can go into PubMed, type in substance abuse treatment, and the year, 1999, and 2000, and 2001. They're constantly adding citations to the database every week, just about. So they'll look at your references. By the way, the citations themselves go into the body of the narrative, but you also have to include the references at the end of the narrative. So you can have 300 references. Because it falls outside the page limitation, the references themselves. And I would include, when writing a citation, the year. So in the body of the text, it will say Smith, 1999. You're, again, writing the points. So you're alerting the reviewers that your literature review is up to date. And you want to ensure that you double cross-check that citation with your references, because they'll look to see where that citation was published. Yes? Over here? Yes?
Is APA style interpreted, or is there a particular style for global reference?
There is no requirement that applicants use APA style. So, but I mean, certainly, I would be as professional, let's put it this way. You're competing in the Olympic Games, world class. So you've got to decide. I mean, you want to make it, how badly, you want the money. I mean, that really should be your kind of overarching sort of goal here. Put it on a piece of paper above your desk when you're writing. All right. Does the literature reference any gaps in knowledge? Does your project address any of those gaps? And make sure to include the literature on the cultural dimensions of the problem. That's why on the left-hand side of your packet I included bibliographies on a number of populations that you might be working with in the community that I found at the University of Washington Drug and Alcohol Institute library website. And I would highly recommend to you the Center for Substance Abuse Prevention has a whole series of tomes that SAMHSA has put out there, available at NCAD. Again, you're going to need quick reference to them, so you want to keep them in your library. So the CSAP Cultural Competence Series. CSAP Cultural Competence Series. This material you would want to include in your literature review. In that 8-week window, it is no time to be calling CSAP and asking them for these documents. It's going to take a week. You want to keep all this material in-house. Remember, know your funding source. CSAP Cultural Competence Series. In addition to a few other tomes, City County Data. The target population. Identify the target population very clearly. You might want to say, subheading, target population, bold. What is your rationale for choosing this population? Well, you've got a lot of expertise. You've been doing this, working with this community for 25 years. The literature review says that this particular program design is well suited to this target population, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you need to provide the rationale. Because when I tell you, when you don't say why you've chosen this target population, you get dinged. You document the need, and a lot of this is scud work, making the phone calls to the state agencies, the county, local, hospitals, maybe setting up meetings with these people, go and visit them. Say, this is what I need. You lay out a table for them, exactly the way you'd like to see it. Sometimes they'll say, sure, but it's going to take about 3 weeks. 3 weeks. You don't have 3 weeks. Yes?
I guess my question is related to what the back asked earlier. When you put what's your rationale for choosing this population, did you say that you have experience and that you'd like to try to establish best practice with this population that hasn't been done before?
Yes.
Is that okay? This is a gap. This is where we're filling in a gap.
Yes.
Okay.
But I would add, though, that, so many of these programs have been, tried before. And before I would say that, I would really do a strong literature review in terms of cultural competence and your target population to ensure that, in fact, is the case. Because this literature that in our field, in the drug and alcohol mental health field, is key, as we know. So you want to check that out. And then pay attention to any specific requirements of the TFA for specific epidemiological data. Many times in an announcement, I do targeted capacity HIV, and the committee wants to see, SAMHSA wants to see specific HIV data for your community, not HIV as a national problem. We already know that. So you have to go to the State Division on AIDS. Ask them to do a printout. And I would highly suggest laying out any tables that you include, laying it out for the people who are going to produce the stuff. Just take a pen and fill it in to say, I want you to fill in these boxes with these census tracts, and going down, I want male, female, this. This is exactly how you want to lay out this chart. Somehow they understand that a lot easier than give me the data on. Because the person who's going to be fulfilling that data request is usually understand these little boxes. Just from experience, School of Hard Knocks. You can't rush them either, because they'll just hang up on you. You've got to be real polite, too. And you may be stressed out trying to get this baby out in 8 weeks, but they don't care. It's not their job. That's why you got to be proactive. Yes?
Do you accept for review epidemiological data from other states? For instance, if there was a program that was operating in Rhode Island, but it wasn't operating in Massachusetts, and the grant was to begin a similar program was operating in Rhode Island, would you accept data from Rhode Island as applicable or transferable to the program in Massachusetts?
With the rationale, you would have to tell me what your rationale is, that you couldn't, that I would say, I would put it this way in your application, that, that the state of Massachusetts does not provide information on the target population because of such and such reason, and that you would like to provide this comparison data in from San Francisco that may be able to make some assumptions about the incidence in whatever city. Or you may have to use some qualitative data, such as the key informant interviews, the hospital administrator, community mental health agency director, etc., as your fallback position. Do a quick key informant series of interviews with people and provide some data that way. Now, comparison data. It's a good. You raised a good issue about including comparison data, contrasting it with the national data, using the national data to make a point about the severe incidence in your local community, or using the state data as a comparison. Creating a table, and always explain tables in some detail. Don't let the reviewers try to figure out what your table is. They'll say, well, is this whole numbers? Is this percents? We're not sure what's going on in this table. So it's always good to say, as shown in table 1.5, you want to say in your narrative exactly what's going on in the table. Describe service gaps that exist. You can also cite, somebody else has said that too. Say in the county drug and alcohol agencies, well, there's no residential treatment programs in our county. Or there's no inpatient hospitalization, or whatever type of program it is. Somebody else has said it, cite that as a reference. Has there been any cuts in services due to funding cutbacks or closures, entire hospitals? In New York, when I worked, entire children's hospital was bankrupt. Indicate how your proposed program will serve to fill those gaps. And if you're proposing to expand a pre-existing program, indicate how many people you are currently serving. And then sources of local data here. Again, going back to Rolodex power, this is where that Rolodex comes in handy. Your proactive work, your networking, you touch base with the hospital administrator, say, look, you know, a lot of these folks with schizophrenia, they're not on health insurance, and we're thinking about doing an outpatient program. Maybe you could provide us with some data about the number of hospitalizations and people in crisis coming to the hospital over the past, say, 5 years. It's always good to have multiple years of data so you can do a little chart. Schools, they can be a tough nut to crack, but if you got a relationship, and you may want to do a joint program, a drug prevention curriculum or something in the school system. Get the school principal or someone like that in the school to help you out, getting some data out of the school, or have the State Department of Education. I'm always amazed at how much data is out there at the state level. And how many agencies are collecting data around drug and alcohol. The Highway Administration collects data because they do accident investigations, and they'll ask about alcohol use in an accident. So you have that database. Attorney General's office is collecting data like crazy on crimes and drugs. By zip code. Access to that database. Child welfare agency's got data. So you want to check out all these databases in advance, so you have quick access to them. Okay. Now, once your problem statement is clearly developed, the next logical step in writing your proposal is to identify the solution to your problem. As we move to section 2 of the narrative, you express the solution in terms of goals, objectives, and methods. Now, objectives are the very foundation of your proposal. You really can't have a proposal without goals and objectives. It really goes with any kind of proposal. They're the heart and soul of your application. And we're building this house, and there's the objectives. Holding the whole thing. Here you indicate to us precisely what you intend to change through your project, and what would you accept? What would you accept as proof of the project's success? Objectives are smart. They're specific, they're measurable, achievable, realistic, and time limited. The project will only last 1 to 2 years. And guidelines for writing measurable objectives that contain an action verb, contain a single measurable result, they contain a target date, specify the what and the when, and are feasible and obtainable. And you write your objectives using a couple of sentences. And list them in order of importance. You can have multiple objectives. Your literature, you said, well, you're going to do a program for pregnant addicts. Pregnant addicts have the following needs based upon your literature. So, with that in mind, lay out these 5, 6 objectives for your program. And some examples. Outcome objectives. Our ABC, the ABC came from, ABC, I just said, let's say that was a real name of a parenting skills curriculum. Came from your literature review. Our ABC parenting skills program will be delivered, action verb, to 25 families. Specific how many? You want to tell the government your funding source, say, look, the reviewer will go right to your index, go to the section that says objectives, and say, well, what exactly are they trying to sell to us? What exactly are they trying to sell to us? Okay, we know it. We know, number one, it's the ABC Parenting Skills Curriculum, which has got a lot of literature around, state-of-the-art. We know that it's 25 families. We know it's going to be once a week for 6 months. And then what would you accept? What would you accept as proof of the project's success? Well, this is what you would accept. At least 20 families will show a gain in the parenting skills proficiency as demonstrated by improvement in the domains of the parenting stress index. So you have your evaluator to the table when you're writing your objectives, and they would have knowledge of these instruments. And you'd say, well, we're going to cite this particular instrument. Good way to find instruments, by the way. For those of you who are mental health practitioners, you may not be able to see this, but as I said, I'm going to leave this up. Mental health database is run by the American Psychological Association, APA.org. It's called PsycInfo. Huge database. I think it's got 1.5 million records in it. It includes 1,600 different journals. It's available for $9.95 for a 24-hour period, $9.95 for 24 hours. And you can just type in particular intervention you're thinking about, whatever. For the target population, you'll get some instruments, you'll get the literature on those instruments. So it's worth tapping into. The other little tome, I mentioned it's handy to have a few reference books in-house. The Burroughs Institute is really the mother lode of all the different instruments for just about everything. They're available for the University of Nebraska Press. 1-800-755-1105. But it's good to have that they produce a little tome called the Borough's Desk Reference for the Assessment of Substance Abuse. And it will really be a catalog, a listing of all the instruments that are used in the substance abuse field. It's a handy thing to have. I think it's around $39, but it's worth it to have in-house. Okay, next objective. Process objectives. You know, some of the, if you look at the announcements, you can quickly get an idea of what they're talking about here in terms of objectives. You go, boom, boom. What are we talking about here? Community action grant. That's really about the process objectives. It's not really about outcomes. The process objectives. They're going to give you money to organize meetings in the community, bring key players in the community to try to get somebody else to pay for an exemplary mental health practice. Process objectives. 5 consumers will be identified, action vote, and recruited to serve on the steering committee of the project. And then a product objective. During the 3rd year of the grant period, a training course and manual will be developed, action version, upgrade action version, the skills of hospital staff that treat mentally ill substance abuse. And a couple other examples, our proposed outpatient program has 2 primary objectives. 75 drug and alcohol abusers will be provided with comprehensive outpatient substance abuse treatment services. 60% of those treated will retain their sobriety for at least 6 months after treatment. Vocational, second objective, vocational rehabilitation services will be provided to every patient over the course of the grant period. 75% of patients will be job-based compensation and treatment. Now, in your packet, I have exercise for writing objectives. I'm not going to let you go home without doing a little writing, so we're going to take about 10 minutes. If you could all take that out, it's on the right-hand side of your packet. It's called the exercise for writing objectives. Because this is so critical, you're going to be successful to write your objectives. You take that out now, spend a few moments. If you've never written objectives before, you have no idea, know nothing about grant writing, maybe some of the more experienced grant writers could help me out here, and we could go around and help our colleagues out who've not done this before. Who's never written a grant before? Never. No experience. There's a couple of people. So, some of the experience, who the experienced folks with this? You got a couple of people here. If we could hook up the experience with the lesser experience, it would be great. Why don't we take 10, 15 minutes? Could you raise your hand?